Welcome to Sensible Truth on the Medlock Post. This is episode 5, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are here to lift, inspire, encourage, and empower. Now, today we're going to talk about kind of an interesting subject, and there's some things that happened yesterday that kind of blends in with this on a news front. And so we'll take a look at this and try to put it together to help you understand. But our topic today is Aristotle on self-rule. Now, Aristotle was one of the great philosophers that uh, a whole lot of people have studied and have misunderstood, understood, tried to twist it and turn it. But we're going to try to put a little bit into perspective today about self-rule. And and here's our friend Aristotle here. But before we get there, let's talk about some news that happened yesterday. Well, but let me give you, all right, I'm all rattled here this morning, okay? Here's a quote from Ayn Rand that fits what we're talking about today perfectly. And she says, the symptoms of today's cultural disease are conformity with nothing to conform to, timidity expressed in a self-shrinking concern with trivia, a kind of obsequious anxiety to please the unknown standards of some non-existent authority, a pale of fear without object. That is going to describe a lot about what we're going to talk about today. Now, here is this Karan Mandani, the Democrat electoral in New York City, chose him as their Democrat candidate for mayor to lead them into what? Well, let's quickly go over his stance, what is a lot of what he stands for. He wants to end cash bail, repeal the walking while trans ban, decriminalize sex work, legalize marijuana, permit safe injection sites, restrict solitary confinement, enact elder parole, re-enfranchise incarcerated New Yorkers, that should be a capital Y, re-enfranchise incarcerated New Yorkers, defund the police. Now, these are things that they're trying to do right now or are doing. And then he wants to introduce new legislation, decriminalize simple drug possession, repeal all mandatory minimum sentences, reduce maximum sentences with retroactive effect, repeal felony bump up statutes, repeal sentencing enhancements, end cooperation with ICE. Well, Tom Bowman told him yesterday, good luck with that. So Mandani is a socialist, communist, a Zionist, anti-Semitic. He wants higher taxes on the rich. He wants city-run grocery stores paid for by taxing the private-owned grocery stores, free child care. Folks, apparently this guy doesn't know anything outside of New York City. I mean, he wants Israel destroyed. He supports the Palestinians. He probably supports Iran. He's just not going to come out and, I don't know, he might as well come out and say it, add it to all his other stuff. I mean, he wants free, 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 free. But the problem with all this that he's proposing is that, folks, it's already been tried. Go to San Francisco and look at San Francisco. They did a lot of this, and the city's destroyed. Go to Seattle, Washington. Go to Portland, Oregon. Those cities were decimated. Corporations left. Businesses shut down. I mean, Starbucks, which was out of Seattle, shut down stores because they turned into uh, uh, drug dealers would just come in, sit at tables, and deal their drugs. Folks, communism, socialism is a failure. It has been tried over and over and over. Oh, but Zoran Mandani is smart. He'll do it better. There is no better communism, socialism. It is a failure. Totally. So when we look, Democrats in the 1960s, John Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And Donnie globalized the intifada, which means Muslims, and he's a Muslim. Muslims take over the world. Now, here's a quick thing. The communists control Act of 1954, which is still a law on the books, which says that if you belong to a communist party, you cannot hold office in the United States. Now, wouldn't that be funny if Donald Trump and J.D. Vance started enforcing this law? Look at the number of people in Congress that would be out. They wouldn't have to change one law. So it's funny. You know, somebody said, "Oh, you want a revolution? Start here." Sorry. Okay. All right, folks, enough of that. Just kind of bring you up to date on stuff. I mean, watch that, folks. Watch what goes on in New York. Um, and how did he get elected? You have so many young people that were indoctrinated in school that socialism is great. But they're not shown the pictures of the streets of San Francisco and Seattle and Portland, Oregon. All right. Aristotle, great philosopher. You hear me quote him a lot. So Aristotle taught on self-rule that that in decent regimes, the best rulers are called the kalos, kagathoi. Okay, I went on how to pronounce this. It's Greek. The kalos, kagathos. I'm sorry, kathos. This is the morally excellent gentleman who governed through reason and persuasion. Now, Aristotle was a great proponent of reason, as were Cicero and many others. Yet Aristotle also taught that all regimes eventually denigrate into something less noble. In those that have become indecent, the gentleman may be unsuited for public office. And that's what he's calling this type of rule. They lead through reason and persuasion. So when both habits and institutions have been corrupted, the kalos, kagathos may be too refined, too punctilious to do what is right, to do what is necessary. So it's interesting that he's looking at it this way. So his excellence in persuasion is not sufficient. You get this? Persuasion is not sufficient. In corrupt regimes, necessity sometimes demands not only force, but also harsh or punitive rhetoric. Justice, or the common good, then requires a different type of leadership, and it's called the aner, the real man. And in some social academic societies or circles, they call it hombre, the hombre. So in this distinction between the kalos, kagathos, and an aner is not merely an academic curiosity, but strikes at the heart of political life and the perennial question of what sort of person is best suited to rule. The kalos, embodying the virtues of moderation, justice, and rational deliberation, are ideal stewards of a polity. The ideal stewards of a polity governed by laws and customs that themselves reflect a certain nobility. So we take a look at this person. Virtues of moderation, justice, rational deliberation, ideal steward of a polity, and the rule of law and customs that themselves that holds a society together. They are at home in societies where public life is conducted in good faith, where words retain their meaning, and where the rule of law is secure. Now, that's a big thing to encompass and maintain, where societies in public life is conducted in good faith, where words retain their meaning and the rule of law is secure. Can we say that about America right now? Can we? You answer that. So their weapons, or that leader's weapons, are reason and persuasion. Their strength found in the trust and respect they command. However, got behind, didn't I? I did. I've caught up. But history has not always been kind to ideals. Regimes decay. Laws become tools of private gain, and the bonds of civic friendship unravel in such circumstances. The very virtues that made the gentleman an exemplary ruler become liabilities, according to Aristotle. His delicacy, his strict adherence to principles, his reluctance to engage in harshness, all are ill-suited to the exigencies of a corrupted world. When the common good is threatened by those who wield power without scruple, the kalos kagathos may appear weak or worse, irrelevant. I know you're going through you're naming people that fit this. You're naming people. But as we go forth here, think, because there have been rulers that embody both, that are willing to do the dirty work, the fight. We'll name some later on. Now, here arises the necessity of the honor, aner. It can be pronounced either way. The real man, the one who, encumbered by the finer points of moral fastidiousness, is willing to employ the means that circumstances demands. He is not guided by an abstract ideal of excellence, but by a keen sense of what is possible in a fallen world. Where persuasion fails, he is prepared to use force. Think about what happened Saturday night in Iran. Where persuasion fails, he is prepared to use force. Sadly, in our world, there are times this is necessary. And then, where gentleness invades derision or defeat, he answers with severity. If justice is to be restored, or at least preserved from further decay, it may require hands that are less clean, a rhetoric that wounds as well as heals. Ladies and gentlemen, Winston Churchill. Noah, look at Noah. Look at Abraham. Moses. Look at some of the leaders in the world. Martin Luther. Look at our founding fathers. They were men of virtue, creating a virtuous society, but they had to stand firm and fight a war to bring society to where it needed to be. George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, on and on. We can look at our founding fathers. Abraham Lincoln did this. Got him killed. He did it, but he got him killed or assassinated. Winston Churchill, John Kennedy. Look at the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis. He literally saved World War III, a nuclear war. And that's what was going to happen. We're on the verge of. I lived through that. It was scary. Donald Trump fits into this category. So let's look at this further. Reminder that political life cannot always be conducted in the drawing rooms of the virtuous. Sometimes it must be fought for in the mud and dust by those willing to do what the time requires. Yet this is not without its dangers. The Aenor, too, poses a threat. Action teetered from principle can devolve into tyranny. Understand that. We've seen that in presidents. We've seen this in other leaders. Go back and look at Fidel Castro. Look at Russia. Look at China. China was a great nation until Mao Zedong took it over in 1947 and turned it into a communist country. They were a friend of the United States until they became, in this case, Aenor leader, and through his untethered principle, involved it into tyranny. Russia's the same. Ukraine's the same. And many countries, look at Africa right now, South Africa. You sit there, there's still refugee camps in Africa. People are having to escape being murdered, being wiped out. All right. So Aristotle leaves us with a tragic vision. The best rulers are those who govern with virtue and reason. But when the world grows dark, a different kind of ruler may be needed, one whose virtues are suited to the challenge of corruption. The hope, perhaps, is that in times of crisis, The kalos, kagathos, and the aner might find some reconciliation, and that a regime once stabilized might again make room for the rule of gentlemen. Until then, it carries with it both irony and a kind of longing. For a political community without the kalos kagathos, yet wise enough to recognize when only the aner, real man, will do. There's room for both if it is under self-rule by the leader. They can be both, but they have to have self-control. So what are we looking at here? Personal virtue ties in to or lies at the core of self-rule. Personal virtue lies at the core of self-rule. It equips individuals with the discipline and foresight necessary to govern their own desires before seeking to govern others. Agency, freedom. In both the ancient and modern sense, self-government is not merely about the absence of external restraint, but about the cultivation of internal order. It creates a harmony of passions guided by reason. So Aristotle's self-rule, the kalos kagathos, is first and foremost the master of themselves, whose moderation, justice, rational behavior, rational deliberation are not imposed from without, but arise from well-formed character within. Do you see the difference? Justice and rational deliberation are not imposed from without, but arise from within. Personal virtue enables one to resist the temptations of power. I want all the power I can get. Do we know people in government that that's all they want is power to control people, control business, control money? Personal virtue enables you or one to resist that temptation, to deliberate impartially. I would love to have that discourse back in America and American politics, and even in the corporate world, that we can sit down and discuss things impartially without coming in with preconceived notions, preconceived beliefs, to come in and sit down what is best for our country. And then personal virtue helps them act with integrity, even when no external law compels it. When individuals possess this fountain of virtue, their self-governing capacities contribute not only to their own flourishing, but also to the health of the wider political community. In effect, the well-governed soul becomes the model for the well-ordered state. The well-governed soul becomes the model for the well-ordered state. And the habits of self-control and moral clarity that define the virtuous person become the very conditions that sustain a free and just society. Let me repeat that for you. The well-governed soul becomes the model for the well-ordered state. And the habits of self-control and moral clarity that define the virtuous person become the very conditions that sustain a free and just society. Are we in a culture that says, don't worry about self-control, do what you want, it doesn't matter? Where self-governing, self-control does matter. It brings about that moral clarity. It helps you understand there are laws that are eternal that need to be followed. So Aristotle's teachings highlight the distinction between two types of rulers in government. One who embodies moral excellence and governs through reason and passion, persuasion, and one who is more pragmatic and willing to use force when necessary. In decent regimes, the kalos, kagathoi, are ideal rulers, but in corrupt regimes, their virtues may become liabilities, making the honors, more forceful approach essential to restore justice. As we did earlier, we can conclude that there can be a combination. The moral excellence and governing through reason and persuasion is your main focus. But in time of corruption or attack or threats, then force might be needed. But when that is eliminated, you go back to reason and persuasion. Trying to put things into perspective on the types of leaders and why maybe some things actually happen. Now, again, you can go back and label your past rulers how you want. Now, this isn't just for politics. This goes in government. I mean, in corporations, in business. This is what keeps our communities safe and sound. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have put out there today some of Aristotle's thoughts on the type of leader using different aspects of leadership. There are certain times that some things are needed and other times not. But personal virtue, that restraint, is needed always. That's self-control. That self-virtue leads to a moral and stable society. And that is our message today on Sensible Truth on the Medlock Post. And hopefully that this has lifted you, inspired you, encouraged you, and has given you empowerment to move forward and help with your decision process. So this is Richard G. Medlock, your big host, your loving host, wishing you a great day, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.